Yeah, I know. I'm early. It's a whole thing. I got a couple notes before we really get going today. One, if you run a business, doesn't matter what business it is, but if you run a business, just a piece of advice from me to you. If you're running a business, the last thing you ever want to do is make someone feel stupid for wanting to patronize your business. If you're, just trying to have a day at work and someone has a question or someone wants to, I don't know, use your services, the last thing you want to do would be, kick them out or confuse them or tell them that you're disinterested in having their service. I'm not talking about like being an asshole and have everything, cut off from you. I mean, let's suppose, I don't know, you were supposed to get a haircut today. You were mentally prepared to endure the panic and anxiety that comes with getting your haircut, and you go to a new place because you haven't found a new place since your old place closed, and you're told that in a completely dead, empty shop with nobody around at, 11 o'clock or so in the morning, that they were booked and there were no seats available. And rather than, walk you over to a desk or a kiosk or a computer and pencil you in with a reservation, you're told that you should just go elsewhere. Now, I don't know what goes on in this barber shop, but it certainly wouldn't be my business. So please, if you're running a business, don't make people feel stupid. Don't make people feel embarrassed about, using your business. It really it sets a bad tone all the way around the rest of the day for sure. Second thing, and I know the clock is ticking down. Second thing, real quick. Any tips or subscriptions or notes or PayPal or anything tonight that comes in, really anything that comes in that isn't Patreon exactly, although Patreon subs will certainly be part of this, anything like that is going to go straight to grocery money and specifically to cold medicine because I'm kind of stuffed up and there's no money in the budget for like blood pressure friendly cold meds. They're more expensive than regular cold meds. It's kind of bullshit, but that's just a heads up. Remember, if you're a Patreon person, you're getting the menu this week and glass onion next week. That's coming at the end of the week. All right, that's enough business for me. Let's go start tonight, shall we?
All right. Just remember what I've taught you.
The fuck is that?
Hey, yo.
I think I got the volume problem solved from last week, so that's lovely. Let's oh, there I am. Hi, and kind of blown out. Why is that? All the lights are the same. Whatever, we're going to cross that bridge when we get to it. Hi. How are you? How are you doing? I hope you're doing good. Troy, it's so good to see you. Thank you for being here. I hope I have a good stream too. Everybody good? It's been this. Is it just me, or like today feel like it's been 3 months long? For whatever reason, I have just dragged ass all goddamn day, and I'm really sorry if I sound a little congested and slightly sluggish. I don't mean to. I'm just kind of dragging today, I'm in very little mood with this glitchy camera. But again, it's because I don't have enough cable and ports to plug in and make the camera be nice. So we're just gonna keep dealing with it. However, that's neither here nor there. Here's what why is that blinking? Oh, there we go. I learned I can click some new things. So, hey, we're starting the day off with some wins. Hi, I'm John. I'm here to help you write better. This chaos is the writer's chat. Let's do the regular opening, shall we? Ladies and gentlemen, guys, gals, non-binary pals, friends, writers, makers, doers, dreamers, planners, plotters, thinkers, enthusiasts, anybody who knows how to knit socks without a seam in the toes, comic book lovers, anybody who's ever watched a movie hoping it would get better only to discover it didn't get better at all, anybody who knows how to make really good pizza rolls, steak enthusiasts, chicken enthusiasts, vegetable purists, anybody who's got a spare Vitamix blender that they're just willing to donate to the cause, anybody who can cut a straight line with scissors. That really was a thing for me this week. And most importantly, the comrades. Hi, it's so good to see you. It's a pleasure to have you here. If you have no idea what any of this is, and you have no idea what's going on, this is the Writer's Chat, where I am about to spend some amount of time, an hour, 90 minutes, 2 hours, who knows, answering the questions gathered from all corners of social media, as well as the questions of those people in chat. Chat, say hi. By the way, everybody's all in this together. Twitch, say hi to YouTube. YouTube, say hi to Twitch. You're all buddied up now. Go make friends. Behave, though. Please? Please? All right. That said, that covered, that done. How about we tackle some questions? I, by the way, am doing very well. Thank you for asking. Aside from a bit of like nasal head congestion, I'm doing pretty good. Can't really complain. I'm gonna wear a bathrobe shortly. You almost got bathrobe John tonight, but I decided I would just rock the t-shirt and go on from there. But I'm good, and I'm excited for this because there's some amazing questions coming, and hopefully some decent-ish answers. Let's go. Here we go. First question. Question number 1. Should I be trying to write what I want to read, or should I be trying to write what sells? This is like the fundamental question at the heart of like all self-publishing. Everybody tends to, I can't say everybody, the majority of people tend to fall into one of these two camps where all of a sudden it's, I want to make this thing, and your thing is really niche or it's really specific to you because it's drawing on the love you had for books over there and for this and that, and 12 years ago you started writing this thing and now you got this and this and this and da 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 da. You've got all these bits and pieces and you absolutely love your book and you want to publish it, but in the way you're framing the story and the way you're considering this thing, you've never thought about whether or not somebody else would like it. That seems to be one camp. That seems to be one side of this pitched battle. Here's the other side. They assess not their own strengths as a writer, not their own strengths of enjoyment of story. They look at it purely in a capitalist swine sort of way. They look at it purely in terms of like, well, if I do this, if I do X, I'm going to sell because X is popular right now. If I include this, it'll attract that audience and they'll buy that book and it'll sell some more. And they think about it not in terms of what art they're producing, but what product they can produce. And art versus product is going to always be the battle we're both driven to fight by the people in charge, high capitalists, as well as the battle we're going to fight internally with ourselves, because those of us who, how do I put this nicely, those of us who tend to disbelieve in our goodness and our quality, those of us more pessimistic in nature, more anxious, more nervous, less certain of our goodness, we're going to look at this and go, well, no one's going to like what I write because I don't like me, and there's no way somebody else who doesn't know me is going to like anything because I'm not great at it. So maybe I should lean more towards that sales side. But at the same time, we've all seen a million things, be it those little rug razor things that they have on Instagram, or whether it's the latest stupid meme your aunt keeps farming around. We've all seen stuff that sells or grabs attention, but there's no heart behind it. There's no soul to it. It's just kind of there because, oh, somebody will buy it, sure. You have to, first of all, choose where you sit in this battle, right? I can't pick for you because I'm always going to pick what I would do. And that might not necessarily be what's best for you. What you have to kind of grapple with, what you have to kind of wrestle with is the idea that if you like what you do, and, here's the and, put an asterisk by this, if you produce it to the best of your ability, somewhere out there on the other side of this camera, way over there somewhere. I'm pointing, you can't tell, but way back there, you're going to find other people who like it. Even if they've never met you, even if they don't know that awkward thing you said to Karen, even if they don't know that thing you did in 8th grade or that thing you did in 12th grade or the thing you did 10 minutes ago or that one thing that seems to haunt you every time you get into a shower. Like, they don't know you, but they're going to like your work because you produced it to the best of your ability, and it's a kind of work they're interested in. That's what's going to sell this. It's not a matter of I can either make what's fun for me or I can make it profitable. Because here, you have to understand, most books, most published books, self-published in particular, sell lifetime for the entire duration of the existence of the product, 200 copies at best. Lifetime. Not 200 a week, not 200 a month, not 200 in the first year, 200 ever total. I'm pausing here for emphasis, but if we're going to write what sells, why not have a good time doing it? If 200 is maybe where we're going to tap out before we write another project, why can't we have a good time and sell a good time? Let's try that. What if we just believed in ourselves? What if we thought we were good enough? What if we thought we were good enough, but also efforted to get better, and then brought people along with us on that sincere, enthusiastic journey? Maybe we could try that. Maybe we should keep doing that. Maybe that's what we should have been doing from way back when. So it's not one or the other. It's find your way to fuse them both together, Dragon Ball Z style. Write what you want to read and write it to the best of your ability with as many tools and help and aid and input and whatever as you need so that it will sell. The two are not mutually exclusive. Stop making them sort of the ends, the poles of a magnet, because they're not miles apart. There's a lot of overlap in that Venn diagram, and it only seems like they're very far apart when we get very cynical and very bitter and, I'll say it, stupid about how we perceive writing as a climate and an activity. Great first question. We're on a strong roll. Here's question 2. Is there still a trend to push writers to produce a series over individual books? Yes. Flat out yes. But that push has to be coming from somewhere, right? It's not going to just magic itself into existence. Something has to be exerting pressure to drive writers into thinking that series are somehow automatically better and that every idea needs to have some kind of like inborn potential for series. Like, you can't just have an idea, you have to have an idea with 5 pieces. Where that trend comes from, where that push is coming from, is traditional publishing, in particular the middlemen and pimps of traditional publishing, because everybody sees dollar signs, because everybody looks at it in terms of, well, if I have 1 book, I can sell this much. If I have 5, though, oh man, I've got people on the hook for multiple books thereafter. And that's not always how you write best. Some people do. That's not bad or wrong, it's just different. Other people, though, will write a bajillion individual books, and that's fine, too. But there still is a trend to produce a series over individual books, because within that series, no matter how long it is, be it 2 books, 3 books, 5 books, 10 books, however many books, there's an assumption being made that the audience is going to stick around. That if they bought 1 book, they'll buy book 3, and they'll buy book 5, and they'll say it all the way through just because. And it allows them to kind of both lean into the marketing. Hey, you don't want to miss out, do you? They'll hit those FOMO buttons. But at the same time, they'll also lean back a little bit and get not necessarily tired, but bored. More of the same over and over with only slight variations. Hey, it's another one of the books in the series you like. Big sigh and eye roll. But there's still going to be that trend because people are thinking about it in terms of the money somebody could make, as opposed to the applicability, the functionality, the usefulness, or the ability of an author to just plain produce a series long term that's as successful at every instance at the very least. A lot of series start off strong, kind of dip, and I don't mean like the bad guys win in book 2. I mean like the book quality drops, and then it has to work doubly hard to rebound in the later books. That's normal. That's super normal. But we could get away from that, and we could teach people how to do that, and you could learn how not to have that happen if people stopped prioritizing this idea of, I have to write a series. If I want to be taken seriously, I have to write a series. And the answer is no. If you want to be taken seriously, you need to produce something you love, and you need to produce that loved thing very well. That's where the serious dimension factors in. This idea that a series is just better is not accurate. It's sort of like saying, I'm going to go to the grocery store and I'm going to buy, I don't know, I need 2 tomatoes for dinner, but I'm going to buy 5 because 5 is a better number than 2. You only need 2. The recipe only calls for 2, maybe 1, and then we'll save 1 for later. But more is not automatically instantaneously better, and more books in and around an idea does not necessarily make you a better author just because you have more installments of a thing. So, yeah, there's still this trend. It's still a bad trend. And no, you don't have to do anything about it. You don't have to write a series if you don't want to write a series. Even if you're going to go traditional in your publishing, you don't have to write a series. It's totally fine. The vast majority of romance authors write a romance novel, and then you know what they do? They go write a different romance novel completely disconnected from the first romance novel. You don't have to. It's fine. Write what you want. It'll be okay. Next question. Help a self-published author produce and sell the sequel to their sequel to a first book that barely anyone read. Okay, strap in. We're going to get kind of crunchy here. All right. First of all, question number 1 is going to be, is the first book still available? Because if the first book is still available, one of the things you're going to want to do in advance of selling the second book, or in combination with selling the second book, is get sales going for that first book. Because that way you can say things like, hey, here's the sequel to this book, buy them both as a package deal. Or, this is book 2. Are you looking for book 1? Click this link over here. So you can at least generate some interest from this other source. The fact that anyone read it, I'm taking first as just a sales indicator, not necessarily a mark of quality. But we'll get to that. We'll do that dimension in a second. But we're going to start just with the plain and simple truth of, is the first book available, and can we do some marketing to help the first book be lifted up by that second book? If that first book is out of print, unavailable, nowhere near possible, can't bring it back, deader than a dodo, well, then the first thing we're going to have to do when we try to package this sequel, as well as because we got to produce it too, according to the question. So there's a normal amount, and that normal is pretty flexible. But when you're writing a sequel, when we're continuing a story from a previous book and we're carrying it forward, there's some amount of recap that has to be involved. I don't necessarily need one of those TV-esque moments of voiceover previously on the episode of whatever show we're watching. It doesn't need to be that. You don't need to go that far, but throughout the story, and not just in the first act, but through the whole thing, you can take elements of a previous book and bring it up in the later book to sort of show that, oh, these two things are connected. I get it. Cool. If the first book is unavailable, and you know it's unavailable, and you have no plans to make it available, then the amount of recapping you have to do diminishes, because you're talking about a book that's just not a thing. You're talking about a book that no one's going to hunt down, no one's going to see, and no one needs. So the amount of explicit, hey, this happened in the first book, you can read about it here, goes slightly. I can't say entirely, but goes slightly out the window. What you want to look at and what you want to look for is how we can use elements of this first book as kind of a stepping stone to get us into the second book. It's important because if that first book doesn't exist, there's also nothing stopping you from referencing loads of other things. Sherlock Holmes is a great example of this, because invariably while talking about one thing, they'll also mention a previous case that's not in the canon. Oh, remember that time we saw that we did the mystery of the potted plant? Well, there's no actual story about the potted plant, but we can just say it exists, and fan fiction or the universe or whatever will spin it up if they need to. But the point is, if you're looking to establish a first book that doesn't really exist. You can treat it like it's a figment, like it's nothing. And then treat this second book, even though it's technically a second book, you could treat it like it's one book. Treat it like it's got no sequel. Treat it like it's just a first book on its own, and you can hit it with all the enthusiasm you should have used with that first book. Producing it, it's still the same production process. We're going to draft. You're going to outline. You're going to organize your scenes. You're going to organize your arcs. You're going to lay your story out. You're going to make sure your character's start state is not your character's end state. You're going to make sure that the conflicts and challenges of the story have transformed the character through hook or by crook, usually emotionally, usually mentally, usually physically, something, somehow, some way. You're going to make sure you have themes. You're going to make sure you're doing more than just saying, this happened, then this happened, then that happened, then this happened, then that happened, over and over and over again. You're going to engage the reader. You're going to treat every sentence like a camera. You're going to try and really keep that reader thinking and feeling in cinematic terms inside their head. That's how you're going to develop this book. Now, when it comes to selling it, you're going to treat this book on its own merits. If that first book is unavailable, we don't benefit from saying, like we heard in the first book, well, you're only going to make people curious about a thing that doesn't exist. So rather than do that, let's keep them grounded here with this second book and just tell me what's going on in this one. Tell me why I should make this purchase. What challenge and what conflict and what interesting elements have you got in your pitch and in your sales copy to make me wonder, I got a couple bucks. Let's throw down for this book and see what's going on. That's all you have to do. The fact that at that point it's a sequel is incidental. You might as well tell me it's a book that takes place over a weekend. It has the same level of sort of engagement or potential for me. Treat each book, even if it's a sequel, even if it's book 3 in a series and nobody read 1 and 2, or book 5 or book 10 and nobody read the others, or they're long out of print. Treat each book as though it's the reader's first time engaging with the material, confident that inside the text, in the manuscript, you've laid a little bit of breadcrumbs. You've salt bayed appropriately to leave people a little bit of a trail that, if possible, they can go back and dig through and find the seasoning and find the pieces to tie together a past for this book. But the fact that it's a sequel, it's not as big a deal as social media will tell you that it is. Like, it's good that you wrote a sequel. Nice job. Good work. You wrote a second book. Good for you. Yay. But when it comes down to how do I sell this thing, you sell it as though it's a first book. Sell it as though it's a fifth book. You're just selling a book. Does that make sense? But production-wise, again, just like selling it, you're going to treat it like it's its own book. It just happens to have references to other stuff. Either it does or it doesn't. It's okay. But don't get hung up. I'll leave you on this point. Don't get hung up on the idea that nobody read the first one, so nobody will read the second one. No, that's not necessarily true. I mean, it's true if you do the same level of nothing. Like if you just sit back and, throw your hands up. Okay, it's on Amazon. Goodbye. Sure. Like, yeah, if you do no marketing, of course no one's going to buy it. But you can always get better at marketing. You can always learn to do more. You can always do something about it. So don't get hung up on the fact that, oh my God, no one read it the first time, so I might as well just throw the towel in. If that was the case, throw the towel in while you're still making the book. Give yourself a chance to actually succeed. It's okay that nobody read the first one. We're going to do better on the second one. We're going to get back up and try again. That's part of the whole process of being a creative. Not everything's going to be a big stellar hit. We just have to learn to navigate the waters no matter what comes. What an excellent question. Are there any questions from anybody in chat? Oh, man. Tonight's tea is new. Like, totally new to me. It is, I wrote it down. Hang on. It is Indian dark. That's all it is. I got it from Tea Runners. It's real earthy. It was like the sample inside a big box. I only have enough for like 1 or 2 cups. It's like jet fuel. I adore this tea. It went really great tonight with dinner, and I've just been chugging it ever since. So, I'm going to be caffeinated to like hyperspace in a couple seconds. It's a good tea. Tea Runners. Go check them out online. Strongly recommend their teas. Are there, however, other questions about anything? I ordered 2 proofs of my latest book. One was perfect. On the other, the dust jacket was folded wrong. Now I'm freaking out about my files. Am I overreacting, or was it most likely a manufacturing error? Troy, it's a manufacturing error, and we can see this because one was fine and the dust jacket was folded wrong. If both had issues, it might be the files, but chances are if one was perfect and the other one's not, it just came off the line in an odd way, or was mishandled or dropped or fumbled, or something in the process was the problem, not the material that supplied the process. One was perfect. That's your files. You're fine. It's manufacturing at that point. Unless you sat there and folded it wrong yourself. No, you're fine. You are overreacting. It's okay. I do it too. Should you order another proof to be sure? Sure is a very variable term, Troy. If it would really make you feel better, yes. If you are willing to say, well, one of my proofs is perfect, and you don't see any, like you go through and there's no like excessive print bleed and the pages aren't all cockeyed and it printed out fine and it's readable. If you have one of the 2 that are like that, I'd say roll the dice. But if you really want that comfort, if you really want to be like, I need to know there's a number of proofs that are always fine, and you have the ability to do so, go order another. I mean, go back to your printer and tell them, hey, why'd you fuck up my dust jacket, you guys? I want to make sure this isn't like a habit or a problem. That's always nice to do too. But if you got one perfect one and the other one just got folded up wrong, sounds to me like it's a manufacturing issue and your proofs are going to be fine. But if you want that double check, yeah, go order another proof. Now, if that newly ordered proof has a problem, you need to raise hell with your manufacturer. You need to go right back to the printer and like shake your fist, old person boomer style, and ask them what the fuck's going on, because 2 of the 3 now, instead of 1 of 2, 2 of the 3 proofs were hosed. What the hell are you guys doing there? You know, I can do a better job in my garage. My grandmother can do it, but, you know, shit like that. Like, shake your fist at them. But only if the next proof you order is also a mess, okay? But my gut will tell me your first one was fine. Your proof's fine. It was a manufacturing thing. Don't overthink it. That's my advice. Good question, Troy. Good question. Anybody else? Oh, man. Shall we march on? Let's march on. Question. There's a typo in my question. Oh, God, how can I dare show my face on the internet? Question number 4. What advice would you give someone looking to write short form horror? There should be an O in you, John. For shame, for shame. Horror, independent of its length, functions on a very straightforward economy of tension and subversion or relief of tension. It's the idea that there's a monster under the bed and, oh man, any second now, the monster could get us. Or no, it's not really a monster. It's just the way the light is causing a reflection in a window or something. Or no, it's actually a monster. Understanding that horror, whether we're talking monster horror, slasher horror, big bad creature horror, cannibals, any horror, supernatural, whatever, all horror lies in its balance of tension and what it does with the tension and expectation. So if you have your story and everything is rocking and rolling along and you set up a pattern for the reader to follow, and then all of a sudden you like make a hard 90-degree turn in that pattern and change the expectation and show the consequence of that change to be something negative, like every time Here, let's think of a thing. Every time somebody clicks a pen, everything is great until the 20th click, and then all of a sudden, someone gets punched in the face. Then the reader's going to start really caring about who's clicking pens and how many times. So you're creating this tension and this question around a thing and either subverting the expectation that, no, this clicking is fine. And then all of a sudden, one click is one click too many. Or like they do with The Last of Us very brilliantly and point out that anywhere you step can alert the mycelial zombie super network miles down the road, makes us cautious and worry about every single step we take. And those small elements developed and challenged make us care about the mundane things, because big giant things are naturally scary. Oh my God, something's rising out of the ocean to attack us. First of all, there aren't that many big giant things that rise out of the ocean, so it's kind of a rare occurrence, and it's going to be naturally horrible because it doesn't normally happen that way. But all the same, it's the mundane stuff that you're really able to wring that tension and expectation and subversion with. The fact that it's short form horror does not change this economy. However, it does change the number of times and impressions and the amount of horror instances and the amount of that economy you can manipulate. If you're really writing something short, you're probably only going to get one or two real stabs at the horror elements. Now, that's going to require you to be really organized and really judicious in what those elements are and how you're deploying them. And chances are, if your stakes are really big, like huge, like citywide or planet-wide or something, that you're not going to have a great deal of impact, because these big stakes in a small space, things are going to feel very washed out and lost. But if you keep things intimate in that small space, and while the aliens are attacking and the buildings are burning down, and it's just the story of two people having an argument in an apartment, all of a sudden this small space and this small story, while this big backdrop is happening, really feels more intense. But no matter how big your short story is, whether it's a novella, a novelette, a single short story, microfiction, flash fiction, whatever, it's your ability to create tension, suggest something, and suggest the potential that you're going to subvert it or not, and keep the reader anticipating, keep them worrying, keep them wondering if this is the thing that's going to trigger the problem. Do that, and your horror, whether we're talking vampires, whether we're talking ghosts, whether we're talking Cthulhu, whether we're talking about just strange, angry guy who, nobody likes in the office, whatever it might be, your horror is going to really, really hit home with a big impact. Awesome technical question. Thank you for asking it. Let's go on to the next. Question number 5. We're switching gears to a different genre. Question number 5. How do you write clues for a whodunit without making the mystery too obvious? I love this question because it's a mystery question, and I love mysteries. Okay, first of all, in a whodunit, the idea is that we know what the crime is, but we don't know who did it. So the clues are pieces of information in our story that help us figure out who the guilty person is. So we're going to work backwards to figure out what the clues are. 9 times out of 10, this is a way easier strategy. Who did it? Let's say, I don't know, Kevin did it. Sure. So Kevin did it. Now, what's the most obvious clinching clue that Kevin did the thing? That's the clue we're going to put at the end of our chain of clues. Why? Because if we put it in the beginning, everybody's going to know Kevin did it, and we're trying to get the reader to read. So we're going to put what's called the clinching clue or the ultimate clue at the end, and then we're going to work backwards. What other clues in less and less clear Kevin instance? So it's definitely Kevin's knife that stabbed the lady. But if we work backwards, what other things are progressively less and less specific to Kevin that allow us to sort of follow this trail close? So, because we're working backwards, so we're going to go from most specific all the way down to it could be anybody. It comes down to knowing the number of those things. It depends on how big your mystery is. More clues does not necessarily make for a better mystery. It's not like 5 clues is suddenly better than 6, or 2 clues is better than 3, or something like that. It depends on what you do with the clues you have. You could have 30 of them, but how much time and space and view and focus you dedicate to them in the story matters. So constructing the mystery itself depends on the number of clues, at least in terms of going from vaguest to most specific, as well as how much time you can dedicate to each. Now, at this point, somebody's going to ask me, hey, John, what about like red herrings? Because we don't only want a linear mystery, right? We have multiple suspects. We want to make possible detours and throw some readers off, right? And you do, by and large, for the most part, every once in a while, periodically, sort of. However, some people take this and go too far, and they make their red herrings so grossly divergent, so radical, so far out, that it doesn't throw the mystery out of whack, but it certainly feels really weird because all of a sudden the reader is pulled so far away from one train of thought that they're frustrated by it. Like the author's trying too hard to be clever, or the author's trying to show you, haha, I wrote a good mystery and you're a nerd who didn't get it, which is like the worst attitude to have as a mystery writer. What you want to do for red herrings or misdirection or anything like that is make sure that there is a convenient and reasonable is really big, underline that a few times, reasonable substitute for the truth. So Kevin's our killer, right? That's his knife over there who stabbed the lady. Okay. But if we back up a few clues, and now we're sort of in it could be Kevin, but it could also be, Ted. If Ted's our red herring, we only really need one clue to swerve off of Kevin and head down path towards Ted. Just one, maybe two, depending on how big it is. And then when Ted turns out to be a dead end, it pushes us back somewhere, either back to the beginning of the who could have done it, or it helps us confirm that no, it's not Ted, it's Kevin. But part of that's construction. Part of that is understanding, here are all my suspects. Here are the clues that point to them. The one who is guiltiest, the one who did it, has the most direct linear path, and everybody else has fragments along the way. It could have gone this way, but it stopped. There's only 2 clues that say it's Steve. It's only 3 clues that say it's Alan. But no, it's 6 clues for Kevin, so Kevin's our killer. Too obvious, though, that's phrasing in your question that I have a problem with. Because too obvious is really, really subjective. Too obvious to whom? There's no universal standard for obvious. Now, some readers who are really, really into mysteries, no matter what you do, no matter how clever you get, no matter how cutesy you get in your cozies, or no matter how dramatic you get in your drama mysteries, they're going to figure it out. They've read so many things, they've seen so many different permutations and flavors that stumping them or slowing them down or preventing them from guessing, sort of turning your writer-reader relationship into something adversarial, it's just not productive and it's not going to help. The goal isn't to stump people. And if that's what you're expecting or thinking you're supposed to be doing with a mystery, please don't write a mystery. The goal isn't to stump people. The goal is to reward people. We're flipping that thing around from the other side. Reward the people who took the clues and who followed along because they're looking for the satisfaction of being right. No one reading a mystery is looking at the satisfaction of being frustrated or being wrong. The reason why we're like, oh, I got it wrong, is because we're sort of chiding ourselves, not so much for paying attention, but more for a matter of, I thought it was one thing, but I discounted something else. That's on them. That's a reader-facing problem. That's not a writer-facing problem. It's not your job to try and stump them. It's your job to continually reward them by continuing the mystery that they keep reading. So you write clues based on the progressive likelihood of them being involved based on who they're related to. So we have Kevin. Kevin's our killer. There's Kevin's knife. Now take a half step back. What is a slightly less Kevin-y clue? Kevin's work boots. Okay, do we have... But lots of people wear those work boots. Great, cool. But that eliminates, people who definitely couldn't. So let's take a half a step back further. How could we further go vague here? Well, then we could just say there's unclear muddy footprints. Neat. Okay, there's unclear muddy footprints. So now we're going to just start broad, and over time, because we worked backwards, we're going to figure out how to narrow in closer and closer to the end. And the climax of your mystery is not the revelation. It's not the, Kevin did it. That's not the climax of the story. The climax of the story is the build-up to that and the actions that Kevin takes or doesn't take to confirm it. The revelation of your guilty party is not the climax of the story. The reaction of the guilty party to the revelation is the climax of the story. That's why the climax of like Murder, She Wrote is, Jessica Fletcher walking into somebody's house and saying, "Oh, you killed him," and then that lady pulls out a gun. It's the revelation and the consequence that builds the climax. It's the, "Oh my God, I have to run away," and then I run and I jump off a building so that the cops can't catch me. Revelation plus consequence equals climax in a whodunit. How done it? That's like Columbo or Poker Face on Peacock. Totally different setup, totally different question. Constructed completely differently because in a how done it, we know the murder and we know the person, but now it's a matter of, are they going to get away with it? Different facing problem. Good question, though, on whodunits. Thanks so much for asking. On we go to the next one. Question 6. How can I improve my word economy? Which is a kind of tuck your shirt in question asking, how can I get better at writing different length sentences? Maybe shorter, maybe briefer. Fun fact, practice. Just practice. I hate to be real pointed about it, but it's going to be intentional for a while until you get comfortable writing at different lengths. Shorter sentences, more direct to the verb, less cluttering punctuation, fewer phrases, fewer setups, fewer conjunctions. Just get right to it. Now, that you don't have to do that every sentence, and it's not like you need to do that every paragraph, and you certainly don't need to do it, every third sentence in every paragraph. Nothing obnoxious like that. But you have to get used to the idea that what you're going to express and what you're going to say comes in a variety of lengths. If you are worried as a writer that you are always just running at the mouth and you've got paragraph-long sentences after paragraph-long sentences, look at them, print them out if you have to. Where can you break this long-ass sentence so that it's 2 sentences? Maybe there's a rewrite involved. Maybe you got to stick a word in or 2 or something. But instead of leaning on that comma, instead of like 15 words, comma, and then another 10 words, what if you hit period? How would you make this shorter? The reader is still reading. Nobody's checking out just because, they stopped using commas. I'm out. You can vary your sentence lengths and the reader will stay engaged because it's not the length of the sentence that brings them there. It's, how you're using the sentences to say whatever you're saying. You can practice your word economy through practice. Write shorter sentences. Write them more frequently until you're more comfortable with them. Short, punchy, fragments, simple sentences with 1 or 2 verbs at most. And just keep things moving. Practice that and then sprinkle back in those longer sentences. And it's a comfort issue at that point. Knowing when to write short and knowing when to write long. And by the way, long and short are also really subjective here because my sense of long and short are not necessarily your sense of long and short. But it comes down to practice. It comes down to just writing more frequently and trying to communicate certain ideas in a limited amount of space. I'm going to see if I can get this thing done in 40 words and then seeing if you can do it. I'm going to try and do it in 2 sentences and seeing if you can do it. Not to race to the ending, but just to see if you can, within some boundaries and constraints, communicate the idea to the degree you want it communicated. That's how you can get better at it. Just practice writing. Thanks for your question. Are there any additional questions, more questions from anybody in chat while I put more tea in my face? Yes, as in yes, there are more questions. I would love some, Troy. Fire away. What is the best story idea you've ever heard or had pitched to you, but that to your knowledge has never been used? That's a hell of a question. The best unused idea I've ever heard? Yeah, okay. Yeah, there's one. A guy named James. I don't know if he ever wrote this book. He's still writing to the best of my knowledge. He pitched it like this. There is a war. You can totally put me on the spot, Troy. That's what I'm here for. It's totally fine. Just takes me a second to think of something. There is a war in heaven, but thanks to some of the rules between interfering with the natural and supernatural communities, angels and demons are only allowed to communicate or interact with people through non-corporeal forms. So angels and demons have to take the form of different non-human things, like appliances or store mannequins or lamps and tools and things, to try and communicate with people to compel them to do certain things. To the best of my knowledge, this take on what is generally a typically pretty binary good versus evil supernatural story, framed through the idea of, well, sometimes these store mannequins aren't really store mannequins, or sometimes, that compulsion you feel to take a hammer and smack somebody at your job site, those influences and feelings are motivated by forces greater than humanity. To the best of my knowledge, because this book also had some fairly dark depictions of things, at least in the pitch I read, it had some really he took things to a very extreme transgressive element because he never softened it, to the best of my knowledge. He wanted to die on that hill, and more power to him. I hope he did. I hope he did fight that fight, because there should be transgressive stories in the world. But because of that, and because of the potential for, holy shit, this is big and shocking in some places, I don't think he ever wrote it. The world misses the sort of punk rock neon color palette he was going to work with. That to me is the best thing I ever heard pitched to me. That's the best thing I ever read. The verbal pitch was, hey, read this pitch. It's better written down than spoken. The best thing I've ever heard verbally pitched? Gosh. There was a time travel cartoon, not like Bill and Ted, but more like a matter of, it was supposed to be for kids. It was like a different historical figures have a time machine, and they travel around to different kids using historical knowledge. And the reason why it didn't get picked up was because it was honest. People who owned humans as property were like, yes, I owned slaves. And networks didn't want to touch that because it was not whitewashed. That's the best pitch I ever heard for television, heard to my face. I was moderating or judging a pitching event, and this lady stood up and she's like, there's a time travel cartoon where historical figures travel through time and own their bullshit. It was the greatest pitch I've ever heard succinctly stated like that. Knocked my socks off. I don't know what happened to that lady. I might have her card somewhere. My big giant Rolodex is just sitting on the end of the desk. I don't remember her name. I don't even know if I was sober. I doubt it, given how long ago it was. But that's the best pitch I ever damn heard. I've heard good pitches since, but by far that was the first pitch that I ever sat there and was like, oh, shit, you don't need to come to a pitch seminar. You get it. Go do things. Go write it down. That one sticks out in my head, Troy. What a great question. Thank you. I'm gonna be thinking about that now. Later, 2:00 in the morning, I'm gonna sit up and tweet, oh shit, there was this other one. But for the moment, that's what I've got. Thank you so much for the question. Are there any others? Else we will march on. All right, on we go. Question 7. What's a never release? A never release is a very extreme version of a trunk novel. So a trunk novel is a novel you write and complete that for whatever reason doesn't work. Like it's a teaching device. It's a story it's okay, but you wrote it and crafted it more so that you would learn how to write and craft. It's not terribly marketable. It's not easily sellable. Maybe it's a fantasy heartbreaker that hits way too many cliches and you're just disinterested in stripping it down. Or it's very paint by numbers, or you're ripping somebody else off like a little bit too much and there's no way you can file those serial numbers off. That's a trunk novel. The vast majority of people writing, especially a first book, very frequently write trunk novels until they get their feet under them as a writer and feel more comfortable in the ideas of writing and constructing stories. And then they start pushing out material that's stronger. A never release is a trunk novel that is profoundly, and I'm going to use a very extreme word here, profoundly awful, either in content or tone or construction. And no matter what you do to it, the only thing that's going to really improve it substantially would be to grossly rewrite it. You see never releases generally from first-time authors who start their pitch or explanation of the story by referencing somebody else's work. Those two traits seem to come together. I don't quite understand how or why, but it's the idea like, hey, have you ever heard about this series called The Wheel of Time? Yeah, so imagine the Wheel of Time, but now everyone rides bears. I can tell you right now, because of how closely that idea hews to the original, and the idea that that's not a great, compelling pitch, nor probably a great, compelling idea, that's a never release. That is a trunk novel that you could write. By all means, go write it. Teach yourself how to write a novel. Get better at writing things, pacing, dialogue, structure, paragraphs, sentences, pages, chapters, acts. Go for it. Go to town. Make yourself happy. But don't release it. That doesn't need to see the light of day. The weird romance novel where, oh my God, there's a deity that falls in love with a simple mortal person, and there's infinite wealth and infinite immediate love, and then sexy times, and then there's no real challenge or plot, and then it's just more sexy times, and then it's not quite erotica, but it's just kind of like boyfriendy fan servicey stuff. That's a never release. Now, you could release it. Nothing's stopping you. But don't expect to light the world on fire. A never release is a never release for a reason. It's a way of tracking your progress and saying like, oh, I did that. I wrote some, that's just, ugh. That's the kind of thing that you don't want to admit to doing. Like, yeah, it's everybody's sort of first encounter with writing. You make a face when you talk about it. It's not good. My other stuff's better. Could we talk more about the comfortable, better stuff when I knew what the hell I was doing? That's usually how you measure a never release. The internet, however, self-publishing in particular, really gave people a chance to publish those never releases under the, how do I want to say this? Under the capitalist delusion that's the best they would ever write. So let's just get it out. I know it's like He-Man with a new hat. I know it's this property with the serial numbers barely filed off, and it's full of inappropriate tropes and terrible cliches. Yeah. But I can publish it now, so I'm going to publish it. And then that's how you get really bitter writers who are like, why does no one buy these books? It's awful. It's because the book's not any good, because it's a never release. It's okay to write them. It doesn't mean you suck as a writer. It just means, hey, you wrote a thing that wasn't so great. You make a dinner that's not so great. You follow the recipe, but it's just kind of on the plate. That doesn't mean you stop eating meals. It just means you don't make that recipe again. That's a never release. It's a normal part of the writing process. Good question, though. And if, by the way, if you're listening to this or watching this and thinking to yourself, oh my God, am I writing a never release? Ask. I don't know. The likelihood, I wish I could give you a number, but If you're really worried about it, go get some feedback on it. Chances are, no. You're at worst writing a trunk novel that needs more polish, needs more help, needs more work before it goes forward. But more than likely, you're writing something that just needs more time and investment in it. It is not, something to be consigned forever to the oubliette, never to be spoken of again. That's fine. You're doing great. Keep going. Keep writing. Next question. What's worse, 0 sales or never publishing? I'm pausing because I'm still what time is it? It is 7:53. I've been talking for 55-ish minutes according to my timer here. I'm still debating my answer to this question. So you're getting an answer that is just immediate. I think never publishing is worse. And I think never publishing is worse because at least with 0 sales, you took those extra steps to publish. You loaded the thing up on a site. You maybe hopefully got it laid out with a cover. You maybe hopefully wrote some sales copy. You did those other motions and you did those other parts of the publishing process so that someone had the potential at least to exchange money for your art. The fact that there were 0 sales is a fixable problem. You can change how you market the thing. You can change what the thing is, but you at least got it out there. Never publishing, whether we're talking about books or podcasts or art or porn or soap or screenplays or theater or whatever, never publishing. I don't understand. If publishing's really important to you, if that's the thing I want to be a published author, why wouldn't you publish? It's one thing if you don't want to be a published author, but you want to write and you just want to say, I wrote this book and then put it on the shelf and walk away. Great. Do that. Enjoy it. Have a nice time. But of the two, I think never publishing, despite telling everybody and their mother that you want to be published, I think that's worse than 0 sales because we can fix 0 sales. You can't convert somebody who's unwilling to publish. They just dig their heels in and it never goes anywhere. And as Troy points out in chat, you can always buy a copy of your own book. As somebody who's done that, so that they could be guaranteed that there was a copy of the book in existence somewhere, there's no shame in buying your own book. Back in the day, it used to be normal for you to get a copy of your own book once it was published, but now needing to buy your own copies is becoming more and more common because capitalism. So it's published. It's done. You did it. 0 sales is whatever. We got to come up with a better pitch, write some better sales copy. Cool. Fixable. It's a challenge, but it's doable. But never publishing? Nah, that's a much bigger kettle of fish. Do you know the number of people who I talk to on the regular and who I've talked to in 20-something years who have been like, I have this great idea for a story, or I have this huge idea that I've been planning forever. Okay, go do it. Go produce it. Go make it. Go record it or write it or type it or sing it or film it or take photos of it or whatever. Go do the thing you've been saying is so important. And then even when they're done making the excuses of oh, well, I don't have a camera, or, oh, I don't have the room, or I don't have this, or I don't have that. Once you take all those things away, they still don't do it. And I don't understand why. I mean, I get that they're afraid of doing it. They're afraid of what happens. They're afraid of it being rejected, or afraid of it being good, or both. Or they're afraid that they'll find out they're just not very good at it, despite it being this idea they've had in their head for a while. The unknown is scaring them. I get it. But you got to at least try, right? Do you understand that I'm in the middle of an existential panic attack every time this thing turns on? You're getting me at the edge of oh my God, every goddamn time. It's different when it's just the microphone, because that way I can literally face the other wall, or I can pet the cat, or I can, stop and pause a million times to talk. This is a much more different monster. But in order to do what I want to do, I got to confront this monster on the regular. 0 sales is, whatever. We can fix 0 sales. Never publishing. Come on. You want to publish? Let's publish. You don't have to go alone. It's dangerous to go alone. Take this. You'll be fine. Give it a try. But that's a decision you have to make. I await you making it. Let's go on to that next question. Hang on. I can tell you right now, question number 9 is going to require me to drink a cup. Hang on. Just mouthful of tea, and then we'll talk about editing. Question number 9. What's wrong with me editing my book through something like Grammarly and then not hiring someone? Okay. First of all, if anybody knows me and you're hearing this, you know the face I just made. Let's go through the list of things. First of all, Grammarly is inaccurate and it's lazy and it doesn't work for nuance. All it does is it's expedient and selfish. It's selfish in the sense that you can do this yourself and that you can, you don't have to bring on other people to help you. You're basically saying, fuck them. I'm going to do my own thing. I don't need them. And then you're also saying that you're a cheap coward because I don't have to spend money. I have these resources. Yeah, you could also build your own house or fix your own plumbing or cut your own hair or fix your car or, I don't know, start your own phone or web company. You could totally do that yourself, sure. You'd probably have a way better time doing it if you got some help, got some professionals, got some people who had more tools and more experience. So while there is nothing specifically technically, the best kind of technically wrong with editing your book through some software, please understand that that's a copy edit. Maybe it's a little bit of a line edit with some colors and playing dress up, but readers aren't robots. And Grammarly is pretty flat and pretty ablative when it comes to applying rules and structure. And at some point, you're going to still have to go back through line by line because it'll strip the nuance and the meaning out of your text. It'll subtract from your story without meaning to because it's just going to go, that's a problem. It's a problem. First of all, you're allowed to have problems in your book. It doesn't need to be grammatically perfect to be a good story. You can have fragments. You can dangle some participles. You can have a run-on sentence or two if you need to. Who gives a shit? The point isn't to produce a technically perfect text. The point is to produce a perfect emotional story. Grammarly isn't built for that. And the fact that you're not hiring someone, well, you're just being cheap and lazy. Because there are professionals out there. There are professionals out there and who would be happy to help you. And if you're just going to turn around and go, but it's expensive. Lots of things are expensive. Welcome to capitalism. But beyond that, payment plans are an option. Working in trade is an option. There's loads of things you can do so that it doesn't always have to be, I'm going to shell out a couple grand. Believe me, it's worth it. And I'm not just saying that as somebody you can, get help on your book with. But if you're trying to make a book for people, why not have more people involved in the process? I don't understand. Are you just afraid that somebody's going to read your thing and not like it, and Grammarly is incapable of saying, you've done a poor job here, insert your name? Grammarly doesn't judge you, sure. But somebody at some point is going to read this thing and judge you one way or the other. If you Grammarly this book and then you put it out, the reader's going to judge you. And Grammarly didn't give a shit if you dropped a plot thread. Grammarly doesn't give a hot rat's ass about whether or not, you really created a decent subplot. Grammarly has no fucks to give about whether or not your opening is the most engaging opening it could be. Grammarly just wants to make sure that you don't have enough passive voice or that, your modifier and pronoun is clear. That's nice. You're misunderstanding the whole point of editing. It's not just a matter of correcting your English like a school. The whole point is to make the most cohesive story possible, to take all the colors you've painted with, to take your piece of art and assemble it and give it the depth you intended and make sure that the thing in your head is the thing that's on the page. And grammar and structure is a very small part of that. So there's nothing wrong but I'm going to think poorly of you. It's cheap and lazy, and you deserve better, and your work deserves better. Grammarly's overpriced. Yeah, fine. It saves you a copy edit. Ooh. But is it helping you be a better writer, or is it just telling you your mistakes? Do you understand the distinction between the two things? Somebody like an editor, somebody like a writing coach can help you become a better writer. It's not just a matter of you're doing that wrong, you're doing that wrong, you're doing that wrong. If that's the kind of professional you're working with, fuck them, leave them. You don't need that. You don't need somebody over there just like hitting you with a stick, telling you every time something's wrong. You need somebody who's going to come in there and go, hey, what are you trying to do? Here's a strategy for doing that. And here's a strategy based on what you're doing to help do it better. I don't see Grammarly or what's the other one, Pro Writing Aid doing that. They don't give a shit. You should give a shit. Hire someone. Ask for help. It's for your benefit. It'll make a better book. I promise. I really promise. And yes, you can totally read two books, one that went entirely and solely through AI and one that went through a person, and spot the differences. It's in the nuance. It's in the language. It's in the construction. It's in the messiness or formatting of the manuscript. Like, it leaves footprints. You can tell. So you're free to do it. I can't stop you. It's a free world. Enjoy yourself if that's how you choose to spend your time. But understand that you are not necessarily making the best choice. You're just making the easy one. But that's up to you. Good question, though. Are there any questions about anything from anybody? I'm going to give a quick skim to social media just to make sure I didn't miss anything. There are questions. Fire away. Wow. The price of, this is a small, insignificant note. It's more of a do you know question. Did I know that the price of the bolts people use to bolt stripper poles into their homes have gone up? Yes. Somebody told me that this morning, but it was nice to get that confirmation. Other questions. Most hardware and building supplies have gone up in price. I'm asking a question for selfish reasons. Sweet. I love selfish questions. Do you think trad publishers want to mess with novelettes anymore due to the costs of associating printing? Oh, so do I think trad pub wants novelettes? No. I do not think trad pub wants anything to do with novelettes. Yes, cost with printing is totally a thing. And yes, cost is a very critical decision-making factor for them in traditional publishing. But they would rather tighten the gatekeeping and make it harder for the novels to come through than they're considering picking up short stories and novelettes and novellas. Why? Because you're going to ask why. It's because novelettes and novellas and short stories still require the same machinery. And I don't mean like the physical printing presses. I mean like the same level of just because it's a shorter thing doesn't mean you market it less. And it's still a time sink and still an investment. They're not looking at it in terms of, well, it's fewer pages, so it's fewer words, so it's lower cost. They're looking at it in terms of, this is a product. This is a product that is shorter than what I normally produce, so it's going to be a harder sell for people who have an expectation of getting bigger things. Novelettes in particular, novellas, short stories, there's a reason why those things get relegated off to anthologies or self-publishing or special interest stuff, and they're outside of the mainstream in traditional publishing because traditional publishing doesn't want to bother thinking about them anymore. Now, it's interesting because if you dig back 75 years or more, everybody was writing novellas and novelettes. And sometimes you'd get 2 or 3 novellas or 2 or 3 novelettes put together into like an omnibus. And that was a pretty normal thing in traditional publishing. But over time, as things have become more capitalistic at the very least. There's always that push for novel and then series and then marketing opportunity and then recovering our costs. And they're not going to try and do that with novelettes. They're going to turn around and tell you that a novelette is like a try hard. Well, you wrote a novelette. Come on, you're only, 60,000 words away from like a real book. That's a thing I've heard publishers tell writers. Trad Pub doesn't want to go near them. They don't know really what to do with them. It's sort of like when you go out to dinner and somebody just orders like an app as an entree, and you kind of don't know what to do with that because it's just like, that's all you want, really? We're here to have like a whole ass meal. It's the same sort of consideration. No, I don't think Trad Pub wants to go with it. Are you too old? Yes, you could frame it, and maybe it's best you frame it as, well, I'm just old-fashioned because I love the shorter stuff. Yeah. Self Pub loves that stuff. But that's more work. And the machinery is your own rather than someone else's. But no, I don't expect Trad Pub to suddenly get like way into novelettes without a lot of people doing them and it becoming a little popular zeitgeist. Like if a really current popular author were to suddenly produce, I'm going to make a number up, probably 3 or 4 back to back to back, and they became monstrously successful, and then everybody was like, it's a trend, let's get on it, then maybe for a limited time they would pursue novelettes. But I do not expect it to ever be standard publishing practice the way that a novel or an epic novel is. Sorry. Well, if you're interested in the adventure of Trad Pub without the expectation of series, Trad Pub will take your solo books, no problem. And minimum page requirements. Well, it's more about minimum word count requirements. Because remember, the people who were handling these submissions, they were taught a pretty strict rubric. It's got to fit this kind of box. It's got to feel and look like this. And if you're on the smaller end of the scale, if you're on the shorter end of word count, then who's ever pitching your book, be it a pimp or not, has to kind of allay the fear and expectation of, well, I know the book's short, but it's really good. There's a reason why that expectation is that expectation in traditional publishing. It speaks to a level, and this isn't you specific, but it speaks to a level of assumed professionalism and assumed organization. Like, oh yeah, they know that a novel's supposed to be between 80 and 105,000 words. Okay, cool. Like, they didn't blow over. They didn't like jump into the 600,000 words. They're not like doing that. And then it's not like they're calling a novel 30,000 words. Like they did their homework. They know what the expectation is publishing wise. But yeah, there's traditional publishing loves its boxes. And traditional publishing will tell you that the reason why they're good, I'm making air quotes, good, and why they're the better game in town is because of the boxes. Everybody likes those boxes. Everybody uses those boxes. And everybody, like, those boxes are best just because everybody uses them. I think the boxes are old-fashioned. I think the boxes are racist and sexist and patriarchal and homophobic and unwilling to change and unwilling to consider things without really pulling teeth. I think those boxes limit people's pay. I think those boxes limit people's marketing. I think those boxes limit people's thinking. So I don't like the boxes. I think the boxes can go. I think we would all do better if we had fewer boxes. I'm going to say a thing I don't say very much. The one thing I like about traditional publishing is that they've really managed to assert a level of expectation in readers. Like, if you're talking to somebody about a book they've read, they are likely going to mention some kind of expectation built around or from something from traditional publishing. Oh, I got this novel on my Kindle. Oh, I read this novel online. But the idea is that the novel still falls within that framework. I respect traditional publishing's ability to create some level of expectation because people swallowed that shit up, which is good, because that way there was at least an expectation of uniformity, and everybody kind of knew what to expect and knew what to get into, and then they could be surprised by the individuality. We knew that dinner had this many components. We knew that the car has this many tires. And yes, change is scary and change is bad because, oh my God, there's a car with 3 tires. Or, oh my God, there's no meat in this dish. But until that stuff is seen as more developed and more accessible, I think you're going to see those expectations persist. And it's not like we need some transgressive maverick to come in and be like, no, you fuckers, a novel can be 35,000 words. It's not, because they're pushing. There's such inertia. There's such a weight, a Sisyphean task to go against that. And there's something to be said for the value in going up against that. Sure, absolutely. Somebody should go against that. But understand that in doing that, you are setting yourself up for a level of limitation and success that you maybe don't want. And I'm not saying that to dissuade anybody. I'm saying that because the iconoclast very seldom gets the credit they're due at the time they're doing the action. And I want everybody to succeed, but I also have to be realistic and say that for the majority of people who want to accomplish the goals they have and the goals they say they have, they need to, rather than try and change all the bells and whistles and change all the expectations, sometimes they need to play within somebody else's sandbox and then show them within the sandbox what they can do different. Yes, the novel is supposed to be this big, but look what I'm doing within that size. Also, if you're, no, I don't mean you specifically, but if there's a real pushback of, I don't want to do it that way, how much of that is really stubbornness? How much of that is really like, I don't want to do a thing because I don't want to do a thing? The Veruca Salt of answers versus, I really think I'm onto something. Because there's loads of people who don't want to do the traditional publishing thing, but it's not because they're blazing a bold new trail. It's that they're disinterested in really trying to support their idea with a longer, more qualified skill. Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. I'm super happy to answer that question. Thank you so much for asking it. I appreciate you also giving me a couple minutes to like really dig into it because it's really good. It's real super good. Thanks for asking. Appreciate it. Let's move on. Let's see what else we got. My camera's doing wonky things, so what we're going to do for a hot second is turn it off. We'll turn it back on in a second. When a publisher is asking for author credentials, what are they asking for? Okay, author credentials are, for the most part, by and large, a thing asked for in nonfiction circles. They're not asked for, I'm going to move forward so I can unplug and replug my camera in. They are a thing asked for in nonfiction circles as a way to insulate the editor, to make sure that if I'm writing a nonfiction thing about, I don't know, stamp collecting, and I'm calling myself an expert stamp collector, then my author credentials would be my degrees, not me saying like I have 10 years experience, but like the verifiable, semi-standardized, semi-expected things you would expect to see from an in-field industry expert. The degrees, the journals, the printing, the accomplishments, the awards, something that would qualify them as an expert more than just them saying, I'm an expert. Those are author credentials. You're not really going to see them in fiction. It's not the same as an author resume, which is usually like, here are the awards I've won, or here are the books I've written, or here where else, here's the other spots I've been published. Credentials are specifically there in nonfiction to make sure that you are who you say you are, and the material you provide is, in whatever you're providing, thought to be expert advice. This insulates the editor of that book to some degree, because that way they can somewhat lean back on that and go, well, they're an expert. They have all these degrees. They've been published a million times. As an editor, I don't need to be as rigorous in my fact checking. That's the danger. That's the problem. That's where, that's where horse shit happens, because all of a sudden it's, well, they're an expert. I don't have to double check everything. Oh shit, they're an expert. You should double and triple check everything. That's a legit problem. But author credentials are just a level of verification as to the expertise you have within a nonfiction space. Here are my author credentials. I've been doing this 22 years. I have multiple degrees in this field. I attended several colleges. I even graduated a few. I've been doing this for hundreds of people. I have websites and awards and books, and I've been doing this a lot. Those are my credentials. Would I like more credentials? Sure, absolutely. Do I have the means to get more? No, but I'd love to get more. I would love to get more. I'd love to be taken more seriously by people, because that feels good on the ego. But at the same time, I'm at a point in my life where I don't want to change that much. And I have a worry, rational or otherwise, that if I were to pursue that more serious bend, I'd have to, not wear a sweatshirt and a bathrobe all goddamn day. And I'm disinterested in doing that. That's just me. Author credentials, nonfiction tools. The downside is they let editors get a little lazy, frankly. Good question. On we go to the next one. There we go. Camera's back. Question 11. I need more tea. Hang on. Have a minute. I've been talking and talking and talking. Question 11. How do I get better and faster at coming up with different pitches? Well, remember that word economy question we answered before? Remember the answer was just practice? Guess what the answer for this one is? It's just practice. You're going to get better first. So in the choice between better and faster, aim for better first. Because anybody can just go fast. You can just sloppily plow through quickly. Say everything really quickly and don't really develop any ideas. Next thing you know, you're done. Nothing to it. Not really big. No point. No value. Aim for better first. Because it takes more skill. It takes more talent. It takes more time. And then once you understand the mechanics of a better pitch, the emotion, the stakes, the information, the deployment of things, the word choice, the pacing, the way you engage your reader, whomever they might be, those tools, once you get more comfortable with them, especially if you're new at it, take time. And once you get better at figuring out, like, okay, I'm going to pitch you this story, here's how, here's the direction I'll take, here's how, then through rehearsal, through mixing and matching ideas, presenting them in different orders, understanding that you don't always have to follow the same formula or do that same stupid math thing of A plus B equals C, and that's my book. Like that lazy jack-off horse shit. Once you understand that you can take all those components and shuffle them around in a load of different ways, the speed comes because you're more familiar with what it takes to do the thing in the first place. So how do you get better? Practice. How do you practice pitching? Well, if you have a thing, whatever it might be, podcast, book, show, OnlyFans site, tea company, Etsy shop, whatever. If you have a thing, you can pitch it. So you're going to imagine your intended audience, whomever they might be, and you're going to try and fumble, and it's going to be difficult and embarrassing and frustrating, but you're going to try to sell them on the idea of checking your stuff out. Now, how are you going to do that? Now, sometimes for a book, we're going to use words for that, but other times, maybe for our art or our products, we're going to show images of those things, but we also want words to go with it because we don't ever only want to just come at one thing in one direction. So we're trying to engage a reader or a viewer, and to do that, we're going to need to be aware of the number of ways we can engage them. So for pitching our book, yeah, we want those words we organize in a sentence to be a strong, effective pitch, but those words are doing double duty because we want those words to be visually evocative. We want, me to say a sentence and you hear it in your brain and it makes you picture a thing. How do we get there? Well, that means when I picked the words to say, I made sure I picked the words that put an image in your head. So that's just practice. So you have your book, you have your idea, you have your podcast, you have your show, you have your Etsy store, you have your whatever, you have your YouTube program, you have your podcast. Just talk about it. Talk about it until you find a set of words that illustrate what your thing is about and why someone should check it out. Not just because, oh, golly gee, I really, really want you to. I mean, that's kind of implied, so that's a given. Let's try again. But learn to shape and craft your pitch. What does your thing do? What is your show about? Why should I give a shit? Is it long? Is it short? What details can you give me? What are you doing that somebody else isn't doing? Do you have examples? All these different tools and all these different ways help us get better at pitching so that we're not just saying, hey, do you want to listen to yet another podcast? Hey, do you want to get yet another newsletter? What makes you stand out? What details can you provide in what order or other orders, because we don't only want to do just one thing, to help us get better? And then as we get better, we can speed it up because we know what we're going to say. The Writer's Chat is your spot every week where you can get all your questions answered about writing, editing, and publishing. If you ever have questions, you can come here for free, streaming on 2 platforms. Pitch, simple. How did we get there? Practice. If you dig all the way back through, my early pitches for this thing were a fucking mess because I was still trying to figure it out. But once I kind of nailed down, I want to say this, and I want to say this, and I want to say this, finding different assemblies of those words and ideas made it a lot easier for me just to spit it out. John Helps You Write Better is a full-service business helping authors produce better work, whether through video streaming, whether through podcasts, or whether through blog posts. Literally, it's in the title. John Helps You Write Better. What does John do? He helps you write better, period. Done. There's your pitch. Practice. Practice and awareness of the tools you use. That's how you get better and faster at coming up with different pitches. On we go to the next one. Question 12. How do I figure out where my weak spots in my writing practice are so I can do something about them? Okay. I'm going to give you a non-writing scenario to help illustrate this, because this is a great question. I love this question. It's fantastic. But there's a flaw in this question. Now, maybe you've already spotted it. Maybe I'm wasting my time. But do you know where your weak spots are? How would you know it's a weak spot without something for you to compare it to? Let's suppose you're a basketball player and your job is to just make baskets. You just sink the ball anywhere. I love basketball, not college. College sucks. Pro ball. That's where it's at. So you're a ball player. You know you struggle with certain things, but you can accomplish it. Yeah, you don't make every single shot, but nobody makes every single shot. But when it's just you in a gym and there's no crowd, there's no urgency, there's no shot clock, there's no nothing. It's just you sinking baskets Tuesday after work. How much of a weak spot is that really? You're by yourself and you're doing the mechanics. And yeah, every once in a while your elbow jumps out and kicks out so your wrist isn't as tight, or you're not getting enough height and arc on the ball. Maybe that's a weak spot. But by yourself in isolation, you can never be really sure. But the minute you get into a game, the minute you go one-on-one, the minute you get into a team, the minute you play pro or just hang out with some friends or get into a pickup game or something, or maybe jump into actual competitive waters, then all of a sudden in the presence of other people, you are able to find out what it is you are best at and what it is still needs work. But you can only do that in the presence of others, receiving feedback from others. And I don't mean like the other team, like the power forward comes over and is like, hey man, you got to work on your dribbling. Like they're not going to tell you that, they're not going to lean over and go, your dribbling sucks, dude. You're going to get that impression from watching them dribble better than you. Awareness and analysis of your weak points comes from relationship or relating to other people. You're not going to be able to find it out by yourself. Hire a writing coach, talk to an editor, get some feedback from a writing group, talk to other people who are also writing, who are willing to take a look at your writing. Because having an abstract conversation of, hey, Where do you think my weak spots are based on the fact that you solely watch a YouTube video every Wednesday? I've talked about some of them, but I haven't quite, talked about all of them. Hang on, pause. Yes, if you go all caps, Twitch will lock down on you. I had that set because way back when I was only on Twitch, it was basically to prevent assholes. And I hadn't really changed it because at that point, when I was able to start streaming in 2 places, I never went back and tweaked those rules. I will tweak those rules. I apologize. I'll unban you in a minute. But I'm coming back to my question because I'm on a roll here. So only in the presence of other people, only in the presence of other people having your experience or having something related to your experience will you find your weak spots. So you've got to ask for help. You've got to be vulnerable that way. You've got to be communicative that way. It's hard and it's messy and it's uncomfortable because you might think that, oh no, my dialogue's not a weak spot, but then somebody else comes by and goes, oh, your dialogue's a weak spot. So you need practice and you need other people. If, by the way, just because you're out here and you're hanging out and you're wondering, well, where can I get practice? If you go over right now, not right this second because you're watching this thing, but if you jump over to Patreon, where's my Patreon graphic? It's right above me here. Patreon.com/JohnHelpsYouWriteBetter. $2 a month will get you access to the Discord. You'll find a whole bunch of people who would be happy to help you with your writing, not like in an editorial sense. That's like a pro thing, but more like a, hey, read my thing and talk to me. Let's form a writing group. Let's do stuff. Come on over to the Discord. $2 a month. Totally super helpful. I use it all the time. But you're not going to find your weak spots by yourself. You're just not. Also, if you ever want to get like real hardcore about your weak spots and do something about them very, very quickly and very, very effectively, head over. I don't have a me graphic. It should be down there somewhere. JohnHelpsYouWriteBetter.com. Book an appointment. It'll make all the difference in the world. Okay? JohnHelpsYouWriteBetter.com. Book an appointment. We'll get you working on them weak points. Okay? Great question. On we go to the next. And the last, frankly, it's a mystery question. I forgot to write this down when I was listing the questions this morning. So it's a surprise to everybody else. Here we go. Question 13, the last question of the night. Question 13. How do you build a career as a self-published author without Amazon? Okay, let's dance. Here we go. We're going to do this. Come here. Lean in. Come here. Come here. It's like this. Here's how you're going to do this, okay? Step number 1. Shockingly, it's the same step as everybody else. You're going to write and finish your book. Whether you have 1 book, 2 books, 5 books, doesn't really matter. But you're going to produce a book. You're going to get it into its best shape. This conversation can't proceed without you having done that first. It's not going to make sense. This is not a thing you can do while the book is in process. This is a thing you have to do when the book is at least mostly done, okay? What you're going to want to look for is a platform to distribute this book on. Ideally, it's a platform where you can exchange money for the product. So whether that's your own website with WooCommerce or Shopify or something, or whether it's something like PayHip or even Gumroad, but Gumroad's take is a bit severe. But you're going to want to look for something that serves the same function as the big giant corporation without itself being the same big giant corporation, because that's a closed ecosystem. If we're not going to get in bed with one part of it, we don't want to get in bed with any part of it. And if you're about to say, but John, like all these people have these devices that they read things on. Yeah, you don't actually need the device. You can use your phone and get the app, and it's just as accessible. You can do, there are loads of different ways where you don't even have to involve like a different corporation. Like if you're like, hey, I don't want to fuck with Amazon and I don't want to fuck with Apple. Cool. You still have options. Produce PDFs. You can sell them yourself. There's no, how do we put this? Whatever loss of legitimacy you're swearing there is entirely of your own making, because all you're doing is the same thing they're doing. It's just that you're not doing it in their parking space. You're not doing it in their little, market stall. That's the word I wanted to use. Because you're selling a book and they're selling books. You're not doing it at the same scale or volume they are, and you're doing it a bit more directly. But it still comes down to the same rules, because what you need to do once you find your platform and once you figure out the method by which you will be delivering this product to the consumer, you're in the same boat as everybody else, and you just need to market this thing. And shockingly, you're going to market it the same way, whether it's on Amazon or whether it's on, your own website or whether it's over here at this place or that place or this other place. You're going to drive traffic to a thing and use compelling sales copy to encourage people to make a decision. Hopefully that decision is a purchase. But it's the same process. What happens with Amazon, and it's by their own design, is that they make everybody think that they're the big fish in the pond and they're the only fish in the pond. Yes, they're a big fish. They're a $1 billion company that is exploiting and ruining the planet. Absolutely. They have spaceships that look like dicks, like they're ruining everything. But they're not the only game in town. But they're the only game in town with enough weight to flex to make you think that all the other games suck. If I may make a reference for my gaming friends, they're Hasbro. And they're trying to tell you that 5th edition is the only way you can play a game with your friends. And I'm out here telling you, oh, no, my friends. There's a whole heap of games and a whole heap of things you can do that aren't the pile of the, underground subterranean layers with the winged worms. You know what I'm saying? You can build that career using the same tactics. You're just not going to use the same website. And if you're about to tell me, oh, well, what about the hashtags and the SEO? Who gives a shit? All that stuff is insular within that platform. All the tags and all the marketing and all the search results and all the ranking, that's all with, do you think right now on a Tuesday your Aunt Edith gives a shit what your Amazon rank is? Do you think that occurs to her when she's like, I need to buy a book? No, she wants a book. Go pitch her a book. You can easily build this career if you're willing to do the same amount of work. Yes, you're going to drive traffic somewhere. Yes, you need sales copy. Yeah, it's a pain in the ass and people are impatient and it can feel like you're taking forever and a day to get somewhere. I know, but the same is true whether we're on Amazon or the same is true whether we're over here on iTunes or Gumroad or PayHip or selling it by, hand to hand on your website. It's the same process. You're just getting caught up in the hat or the parking space you're selling in. You can do this. It just comes down to, what are you saying? What's your message? How are you communicating? Hey, are you a person? Do you want to buy a thing? How are you communicating what your thing is? Hey, you want to buy a thing? Sure. Buy this thing, not that thing. What's your messaging on that level? 3, how accessible are you making the thing you want to purchase? Oh, you want to purchase a thing and you want to purchase my thing? Here's how easy it is to do that. Go here, click this thing, do that. How many people are you potentially reaching through accessibility as a whole? If you're looking for somebody with low vision concern or color blindness concern, are you producing things with captions and transcription for the hard of hearing or deaf community? Are you producing sensory friendly material? Are you producing things with considerations for people who are not like you? All those things, which Amazon doesn't give a fuck about, all those things give you a chance to reach more people who have just as much concern and just as much interest in acquiring your material. But for some reason, we don't seem to talk about that. I wonder why that is. Could it be perhaps because Amazon dominates the conversation and prohibits us from considering people that don't fit the uniform, homogenized Amazon consumer model? I wonder. But you can take into consideration all these factors. You can think about these things. You're allowed to. You don't have to go with Amazon. You don't have to go with Apple. You don't have to go with Google. You can go your own way. You can do your own thing. It's the same amount of work, except it's going to be done in a different space. But again, messaging, opportunity, and then trust. Here's the tricky part. You got to trust that somebody somewhere is going to say yes, because you've made it as easy as possible. You've led the horses to the water, up to them to drink. Now, you can keep telling them that they're thirsty. You can keep reminding them over and over that, hey, you guys like water. Come on, horses, drink that shit. But you can't grab the back of their head and force them to drink, You can hand them straws. You can tell them it's real hot outside today. You can tell them how great it is to be hydrated for my hydro homies out there. But at the end of the day, it's the horse's choice. All you can do is make it as easy as possible. But it is entirely possible to go without Amazon. I'm doing it right now. Yeah, you can buy some stuff of me, things I've edited on Amazon. Go ahead. But you can also go over to payhip.com/John helps you write better. And for $9, buy a thing I put out. Go ahead. Why not? Go for it. You can get wherever your pods are casted. You can get John Helps You Write Better as a podcast. Yes, it's available on all the big platforms, but it's also available in small places you probably never heard of. Why? Because I want it to go out everywhere into the world so that anybody has a chance to hear it and benefit from it. You can do plenty. You can do this. It just requires some thinking and some organization rather than just saying, what's everybody else doing? I'm just going to do that. Because we want to do better. We need to do better. We should do better. We should effort to do better. It's worth the effort. It's worth the expense. It's worth the hardship. It's worth the pain. It's worth the impatience. Because in the end, our goal shouldn't just be, I'm going to be on Amazon. Who gives a fuck? Your goal should be, I'm producing this art that's going to help somebody have a better experience in life. That's our goal. That's the plan. You don't need Amazon for that. Yeah, they're great, but they're Amazon. Do we want to keep giving money to the Dick Rocket guy? I'm unhappy giving money to the Dick Rocket guy. Now, there are times I need the Dick Rocket guy to help, get me the things I need in a timely fashion. And I'm not talking like the laziness of consumerism. I mean like, oh shit, I need supplies to survive because I live in an area that doesn't have a great deal of access to them otherwise. So I'm stuck using the tools of my oppressor. It sucks. It blows. But here we are. But if you're going to blaze your own trail and do your own thing and get your art out into the world, you don't have to obey the corporate master. You just need to understand the tools you have at your disposal to put your stuff out into the world and then do the work to make sure that people know, hey, my stuff is out here. And if you ever need more help with that, johnhelpsyouwritebetter.com. I'd be happy to help anytime. That's how you build a career as a self-published author without Amazon. I made it sound simple. It's not, but it's doable. Really. I swear. I promise. Are there any other questions from anybody about anything while I finish this cup of tea? I am also painfully aware that I'm hungry. Questions? Who has some? Selfish question. I love selfish question number 2. All right, fire away with selfish question number 2. I know, I'm just sitting here. A novelette, and it's been edited. It's less than 18,000 words. If I send it to me, if you send it to me, would I look at it? Yes. Just send it to me. Yeah, just book an appointment. JohnHelpsYouWriteBetter.com. Get a coaching appointment. Yeah, absolutely. I would be happy to read it if you send it to me. JohnHelpsYouWriteBetter.com. Click the book an appointment. Yeah. Go to the website, book an appointment. At the bottom of the appointment, there should be a thing to attach a file. Just in the box. Right. Hey, here's my thing. And I'll go take a look at it. Yeah, it's totally a service I offer. What are the keys to putting together a quality conclusion on the first book in a planned series? Well, shockingly, they are the same keys to putting together a quality conclusion on other books in a planned series. The keys for putting together a conclusion at whatever point are as follows. 1, first and foremost, need to make sure that the conflict presented in the climax is resolved. And not necessarily terminated and done forever, but at least resolved as the book has presented it. We blew up the Death Star. We have not eliminated the Empire, but we at least blew up the Death Star. We've done the thing that the conflict and the climax of the story needed us to do. That's going to be item number 1. Item number 2. In the course of doing that, in the course of the main character or main characters going through the conflict, have they progressed through their arc such that they have been transformed? They're no longer the same people they were before. They've transformed and changed in their arcs, and we can now say that they are different people. That's going to be item number 2. Item number 3. In the course of doing that plot thing, in the course of going through their arcs, have they been challenged? Did they have to do the hard work? Did they have to break a sweat? Were things difficult for them? Were there losses and sacrifices and challenges and risks they took? That's going to be item number, what are we on, 3 or 4? Next one. Is the world different at the end, post-climax, than it was at the beginning? Hey, we blew up the Death Star. Or, hey, the dinosaurs are on their own island or whatever. If you're doing all of those things, what's that, 4 or 5 things? Then so long as you are concluding the story in a way that illustrates all those things, not necessarily all in one paragraph, but certainly all collectively, your conclusion is going to be fine. The fact that it is the conclusion of a first book is somewhat immaterial, because if you're talking about, well, how do I leave the door open so that the people know that there's, room for other books in the series? You don't have to go out of your way you don't have to write the cornball sentence of and that was another adventure for another day, or they looked out the window on the storm on the horizon. You can, you don't need to, but it's a matter of, did I wrap up this story? And did I make it possible for there to be other stories I produce? Not in-world narrative reasons. Just, did I not wrap everything up so tightly? Is everybody alive? Did I kill everybody off? Is it just the world's bleak and dark and the sun explodes and there's no hope whatsoever? Or did I leave any kind of door open at all? We don't have to know what that door is. We don't have to be clued in or tipped off that the next book, by the way, specifically deals with that one thing on page 300. No, it just, is there room for it? Is there potential for it? We watch, everybody fly away in the helicopter as the volcano explodes, and they go home, and that's the end of the story, but they could always get on a different helicopter for another adventure. If you're going to leave the door open, you're fine, so long as you did those other things with completing the climax, satisfying the arcs, showing change in character, making sure that the world has been affected by the events of the story. Do that. Your conclusion will feel more complete, feel more satisfied, feel more all together, and then whatever book it is will be fine. And then you can go forward and do the same process for the next book and the book after that and the book after that and the book after that. Those are the keys. Good question. Other questions? That's a really good one. That's a really good question. What else? Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for asking. Other questions? Oh, sure. No, it's really, really, ask all the questions you want. It's totally fine. In theory, I got at least another half hour before I will either be too hungry and delirious or I will run out of voice. So ask all the questions you want. It's totally fine. Understand, though, that the longer this thing goes, the later it will be up on the podcast feed because I got to, make the audio. questions, issues, etc. Else, we will go to the outro. Let's go to that sweet, sweet outro then. Everybody good? Outro! That was fun. I had a good time. That was a delight. Thank you so much, everybody, for your amazing questions. They were delightful. Thank you. Thank you for letting me run a little long and give some detail and chew on some things and put me on the spot a few times, too. That's always good. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks for checking this out. Thank you for your continued support, by the way. Thanks for letting me plug my stuff. It means a lot. I have to get better at doing it, and thank you for giving me a chance to get better at doing it. I hope you got something out of this. If you have any questions, anytime, about anything I said here, two things you can do. One, jump over to johnhelpsyouwritebetter.com. Write me an email. Ask all the questions you want. You can also find me at Gmail, johnhelpsyouwritebetter@gmail.com. Other things you can do. If you want to support this and see more things like it, patreon.com/johnhelpsyouwritebetter. More than happy. $2 a month. I will help you write better to the best of my human ability. And wherever you get your pods, wherever they are casted, search for John Helps You Write Better. You'll get this chat later as soon as it's processed, as well as everything else I've ever done. Thank you so much for being here. All power to all people. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for doing some cool shit. Am I ever going to do the deep dives like I used to do on Monday? Yes. Perhaps I will be doing one this coming Monday. Who knows? You know how you could find out? You can go over to johnhelpsyouwritebetter.com/newsletter and sign up, because perhaps there will be an announcement about a deep dive this coming Monday. Who knows? I wonder. johnhelpsyouwritebetter.com/newsletter. The next time, though, I'm here will be on February the 8th. So a week. But perhaps there will be something on Monday. Stay tuned. Follow this channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe and click the bell for notifications, because that way the algorithm is praised. All hail the algorithm. Until then, until we talk next, whenever that might be, all power to all people. Take care of yourselves. Tell people you love them, and I will talk to you very, very soon. See ya!